Aaron climbed the jagged cliffs above his village as the sun dipped behind the mountains, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink. He had always loved these cliffs. From here, he could see the forests stretching for miles, the rivers winding like silver ribbons, and the empty skies where dragons used to soar. Every evening, he imagined their great wings casting shadows over the land, their roars shaking the mountains. But dragons had vanished long ago, taken by hunters and time. No one in the village had seen one for generations. Aaron's grandmother often told him stories about dragons. She spoke of their wisdom, their power, and their kindness when treated with respect. Dragons are not beasts to conquer, she would say, her voice soft but firm. They are the soul of the world. Listen to them and they may listen to you. Aaron had memorized these stories and kept them close in his heart. He had a strange feeling that the dragons were not entirely gone, that something still lingered, hidden in the mountains or forests, waiting. As the wind blew cold against his face, Aaron felt a mixture of fear and excitement. He had climbed higher than usual, reaching the peak where only eagles dared to fly. He closed his eyes and called out into the empty sky. At first, his voice was just a whisper, almost drowned by the wind. Then he sang a tune his grandmother had taught him, a melody she said could reach the hearts of dragons. The wind seemed to change. It grew still, almost heavy, as if the world itself had paused to listen. Aaron's heart thumped loudly in his chest. He opened his eyes and scanned the horizon. At the far edge of the cliffs, a ripple of air shimmered like heat on a summer road. His breath caught. He could feel something beneath his feet, a vibration that was not the wind or the earth itself. Something alive was listening. For a moment nothing happened. Then he heard it, a deep, low sound that rolled over the mountains like distant thunder. Aaron froze. The sound was not frightening, but it was powerful, alive in a way that no animal or human could match. He took a cautious step forward, peering into the valley below. Mist clung to the trees and rocks, hiding whatever had made the sound. Another roar echoed, closer this time, and it carried a tone of curiosity, not anger. Aaron's pulse quickened. He had never seen a dragon, but he had imagined them often. He imagined a massive creature with silver scales that shimmered in the sun, eyes bright with intelligence, wings wide enough to blot out the sky. He imagined fire curling from its mouth, not to harm but to light the dark corners of the world. And now he sensed that his imagination might not be so far from reality. Aaron wanted to run, but his feet stayed planted on the cliff's edge. The sound came again, longer this time, and it carried a sadness that tugged at his heart. He realized the dragons might be lost, wounded, or hiding from humans for their safety. The thought made his stomach tighten. If dragons were still alive, they needed someone to help them, someone who would not harm them. He felt a strange resolve build inside him, a determination he had never felt before. As the last rays of sunlight disappeared behind the mountains, the valley below darkened. The shadows moved in the mist, but Aaron could not see clearly. He whispered to the wind, repeating the melody, hoping it would guide the creature closer. The air shimmered again, and this time he thought he saw movement, a silver flash like moonlight reflected on water. His heart leaped. Could it be? Aaron's mind raced with questions. How many dragons had survived? Were they alone or had they found safety together? Could a human really reach them after all these years of fear and hunting? He felt a mixture of hope and fear, unsure if the creatures would trust him or flee at the first sign of a human. Yet he knew one thing for certain: he had to try. Night fell completely, and the stars appeared like tiny sparks in the black sky. Aaron stayed on the cliff, singing softly, letting the wind carry his melody through the mountains. The valley below remained silent for a while, but then a soft glow appeared in the mist. It was small at first, distant, like the flicker of firelight. It moved slowly toward him, cautious but curious. Aaron's breath caught in his throat. The glow grew larger, and he could make out a shape, enormous yet graceful, with scales that reflected the starlight. The creature stepped into view, lifting its massive head to look at him. Its eyes were bright and intelligent, filled with a wisdom that seemed ancient. Aaron felt a shiver run down his spine. This was no ordinary animal. This was a dragon, alive and real, standing before him for the first time in his life. Aaron held out his hand, not knowing if the dragon would understand, not knowing if it would trust him. The dragon tilted its head, studying him, and for a moment, the world seemed to hold its breath. Then it lowered its massive head slightly, a gesture of recognition or perhaps curiosity. Aaron smiled, feeling a connection stronger than anything he had ever known. He realized then that his journey had just begun. Dragons had vanished from the world, but one had answered his call. Somewhere in the mountains, others must still exist. And if he could reach them, if he could earn their trust, he could change everything. The boy and the dragon stood in silence, two hearts recognizing each other across species, two souls bound by a shared hope. Aaron knew the villagers would never believe him, but that did not matter. He had seen the impossible and he had felt the impossible. Somewhere out there dragons still lived and he would find them. He would protect them. And perhaps one day they would soar across the skies together again as they once had, before fear and greed drove them away. With the stars shining above and the dragon watching him carefully, Aaron made a promise to himself and to the world. He would not let dragons vanish again. He would be their voice, their protector, and their friend. The night was quiet, but in the distance the soft echoes of something ancient stirred, a sound that whispered of fire, wings, and life, and it answered the call of a boy who believed. Aaron stayed on the cliff long after the dragon had appeared. The creature did not move closer, but its presence filled the valley with an energy he could feel deep in his chest. Night had settled completely, and the stars reflected in the dragon's silver scales, making it glow like a living moon. Aaron whispered his melody again, softly, almost like a lullaby, and watched as the dragon lifted its head, listening. The air between them was still, heavy with anticipation, and for the first time, Aaron felt that dragons were not just legends. They were alive, cautious, and waiting for someone who would not hurt them. The boy had no idea how to approach it, but he knew he could not leave. He carefully climbed down from the cliff, step by step, making sure not to make sudden noises. His heart raced with excitement and fear. The valley was misty and dark, but he could still see the dragon's glowing eyes watching him. Every step he took seemed to echo through the valley, yet the dragon remained still. It was patient, as if testing him. As he reached the bottom, Aaron noticed how enormous the dragon really was. Its head alone was larger than him, and its body stretched beyond the trees, scales shimmering like polished metal. Smoke curled from its nostrils, faint and blue in the cold night air. Its claws dug lightly into the ground, leaving marks in the soft soil. Despite its size, it moved gracefully, each breath slow and steady. Aaron felt a mix of awe and nervousness. He had dreamed of dragons his whole life, but now that he stood so close, he realized how small he really was. "Hello," he said softly, his voice trembling slightly. I'm not here to hurt you. I just want to help." The dragon's ears twitched and it let out a low hum, like a vibration through the earth. Aaron took a cautious step closer, holding out his hand. The dragon tilted its massive head, staring at him with eyes that seemed to hold centuries of memory. It was not angry, not frightened, just curious. Aaron noticed that the dragon was wounded. A long scar ran across one of its wings, and its left hind leg seemed stiff. He realized then that dragons had survived, but they had suffered. Humans had hunted them for so long that even the few left were hurt and afraid. The boy's heart clenched. He could not let this creature face the world alone. He needed to find a way to help it and perhaps, through it, discover the others. He took a small flask of water from his pack and slowly poured it into a shallow stone dish he had found nearby. The dragon watched every movement, its glowing eyes following the water as it settled in the dish. Aaron stepped back slightly, unsure if the dragon would drink. To his relief, it lowered its massive head, touched the water with its tongue, and drank slowly, carefully. Aaron's chest rose with a deep breath of relief. The first step of trust had begun. Aaron spoke to the dragon in quiet tones, telling it stories of his village and of the world outside the mountains. He spoke of humans who loved and respected dragons, not just hunted them. He spoke of the forests and rivers, and of how the sky could be shared by humans and dragons alike. The dragon listened, tilting its head, its eyes never leaving him. Sometimes, it let out a soft rumble as if acknowledging his words. Aaron felt a strange connection forming, one that went beyond fear and distance. The night grew colder and mist swirled around the valley. Aaron realized he needed to keep the dragon safe, at least for now. He had no idea where it had come from or how many others might exist, but he knew he could not let it wander alone. "We should find a place for you to rest," he said gently. The dragon looked at him, then turned slightly and lowered its wings, inviting him to follow. Aaron felt a surge of hope. The dragon was letting him guide it, and that meant it trusted him even a little. Together they moved through the misty forest. The dragon's enormous body moved carefully, stepping around trees and rocks. Aaron kept close, alert for every sound. Owls called in the night, and small animals scurried away, but the dragon's presence seemed to calm the forest rather than frighten it. Aaron realized that dragons were part of the world in a way humans could never fully understand. They belonged to the mountains, the rivers, the skies, and yet they had chosen to listen to him. After some time, They reached a small cave hidden behind a waterfall. The roar of the water covered the sounds of the valley, providing a perfect hiding place. Aaron led the dragon inside and helped it settle on the smooth stone floor. It crouched, folding its wings carefully, and rested its massive head on its front claws. Aaron could see the tension in its body slowly ease. The dragon was tired, but it was safe at least for now. Aaron sat nearby, thinking about what had just happened. He had awakened something ancient with nothing but his voice and a song. One dragon alone was already a miracle. He wondered how many more dragons were left, hiding across the mountains and forests. He knew that finding them would not be easy and protecting them would be even harder. Humans still feared dragons and hunters still sought to capture or kill them. But for the first time in his life, Aaron felt that dragons could trust a human again. And that trust, he knew, could change everything. As he looked at the sleeping dragon, Aaron realized that this was only the beginning. One creature, injured and alone, had found hope again. If he could reach the others, if he could speak to them as he had spoken to this one, dragons might return to the world. He made a promise to himself, quiet but firm. He would find the other dragons and he would protect them with all his heart. The mist swirled outside, the waterfall thundered, and the stars shone above the hidden cave. Aaron felt a calm determination settle over him. The first dragon had answered his call, but the mountains held more secrets. The boy and the dragon shared a silent understanding. Trust had been formed, and the first echo of hope had returned to a world that had forgotten dragons. Aaron woke to the sound of the waterfall roaring outside the cave. The dragon lay quietly on the stone floor, its silver scales glinting in the morning light. It lifted its massive head and let out a low rumble as if greeting him. Aaron smiled. He had named it Oriath, after the shimmering color of its scales. The bond between them had grown stronger overnight. Oriath no longer seemed fearful of him. Instead, it watched his movements with calm curiosity, testing and learning who he truly was. Aaron had spent hours talking to Oriath, telling her about the forests, the mountains, and the rivers. She listened, occasionally tilting her head or letting out a soft hum. He could feel her thoughts, not in words, but in the rhythm of her breath, the twitch of her ears, the slight sway of her tail. Somehow she trusted him. Somehow she knew he was different from the humans who had hunted her kind. Aaron knew he had to repay that trust. They spent the day exploring the hidden valleys near the cave. Oriath moved gracefully, her large wings tucked close to her body. Aaron noticed scars and injuries across her body, evidence of battles and escapes. She had survived on her own for years, hiding from humans and predators alike. As they walked, Aaron called softly, repeating the melody he had sung on the cliffs. Occasionally, the wind carried the sound, and he swore he could hear faint echoes responding from the distance. By late afternoon, those echoes became more distinct. A low roar sounded from a nearby canyon, followed by the flutter of massive wings. Oriath's ears twitched and she turned her head sharply. Aaron's heart leapt. Could there be more dragons? He felt a surge of hope and fear at the same time. The echoes grew stronger and soon, through the misty canyon, a figure appeared, a golden dragon with jagged scars along its flanks. Its name, he would later learn, was Gorath. Gorath moved with caution, circling above them before landing a short distance away. Oriath let out a soft call, a sound that carried trust and reassurance. Gorath hesitated, then lowered his massive head, eyes scanning Aaron. The boy remained still, holding out his hands in peace. For hours they observed each other. Finally, Gorath stepped forward, his movements slow and deliberate. The two dragons sniffed the air, exchanging silent greetings. Aaron felt a thrill run through him. One dragon had been a miracle, two might change everything. As the sun began to set, another echo came from the forest. A small, bright blue dragon, agile and sharp-eyed, appeared at the edge of a clearing. She was younger and smaller than the others, but fierce in her movements. Aaron noticed her curiosity as she studied him and Oriath from a distance. He decided to approach slowly, speaking softly and keeping his hands visible. The small dragon, later called Lysara, inched closer, testing his intentions. With patience, she allowed him to touch her snout lightly. The boy's heart soared. He had never imagined he would meet so many dragons in one day. The final dragon came at dusk. From the shadows of the mountains, a dark, almost black dragon emerged. His scales blended with the night, making him hard to see. He was larger than the others, with eyes sharp and cautious. Aaron could feel his hesitation. This was Tharn, a dragon who had learned to trust no one. Tharn circled the clearing, observing the boy and the other dragons. Slowly he landed, his wings folding carefully against his back. He sniffed the air then studied Aaron's movements. The boy spoke quietly, letting his voice carry calm and peace. Tharn finally stepped forward, a silent acknowledgement that trust was forming. Aaron realized that the dragons were not alone. Each had survived in hiding, but the world outside the mountains remained dangerous. Humans had forgotten fear of dragons, but hunters still existed. Aaron thought of the villagers who had once hunted them, the guilds that captured dragons for profit, and the cities that expanded into the mountains. He knew that if they were discovered, it could mean death for the dragons. Yet, for the first time, dragons had allies in humans, himself being one of them. He spent the next days moving through the forest, teaching the dragons to hide and to move silently. He showed them paths where hunters would not find them, secret caves and hidden clearings. Oriath and Gorath led, using their knowledge of the mountains, while Lysara and Tharn learned quickly, testing their abilities and building trust. Aaron realized that dragons were not only powerful but clever. They could read the land, understand danger, and respond faster than any human could. With patience he saw that together they could survive, and maybe even thrive. But danger was never far. On the third day, while exploring a narrow canyon, they noticed smoke rising in the distance. Aaron's heart sank. Hunters or villagers had seen signs of dragons. The dragons growled softly, a warning and a reminder that the world outside their hidden valley remained hostile. Aaron made a plan. They would move deeper into the mountains, places humans could not reach, and use their wings and instincts to avoid danger. He knew he could not fight humans with strength alone. They needed cleverness, patience, and the bond they had formed. That night, the 4 dragons circled above the camp while Aaron sat by the fire, thinking. The stars shone bright, and the wind carried distant echoes, perhaps other dragons responding. He realized the task ahead was enormous. Finding dragons was only the first step. Protecting them, guiding them, and teaching humans to coexist with them would be far harder. Yet for the first time he felt hope. Dragons were returning, not just as legends, but as living beings ready to reclaim their place in the world. Aaron smiled as he looked at Oriath resting nearby, Gorath's golden scales glowing faintly, Lysara perched alert, and Tharn blending into the shadows. Together they formed a small, fragile family, a bond of trust and courage. The gathering storm of the world beyond was coming, and they would face it together. The mountains, forests, and skies would remember dragons once more, and a human boy had sparked the first echo that might awaken them all. The morning was quiet, but Aaron felt tension in the air. The dragons were restless, circling the hidden valley and testing the edges of the forest. He had taught them to stay alert, to listen to the sounds of the mountains, and to sense danger before it arrived. The trust between him and the dragons had grown strong, but the world outside remained dangerous. Humans had not forgotten the power of dragons, and some still hunted them for profit or fear. As Aaron watched Oriath soar above, he noticed a thin line of smoke far across the valley. His heart sank. It was not from their campfire or the natural forest fires. This smoke was deliberate. Someone had been searching. Aaron signaled to the dragons, and they scattered quietly into the mist, moving like shadows through the trees. He kept low, pressing against the rocks, careful not to make a sound. He had to see who had come before they discovered the dragons. From a high ridge he saw them, a group of humans moving in organized lines, armed with nets, ropes, and metal cages. Their leader, a tall man with a cold face and a heavy cloak, surveyed the valley like a general preparing for battle. Aaron had heard stories of hunters, but this man seemed different. He commanded with authority, and his gaze swept the landscape as if he already knew the dragons were there. The boy's stomach tightened. This was Commander Valen, a name whispered among villagers with fear. He had hunted dragons before and would stop at nothing to capture them. Aaron ran silently through the trees, keeping out of sight, while the dragons waited for his signal. He had no weapons, only his wits and the trust he had earned from the creatures. He realized that fighting directly would be impossible. Humans had metal and fire, while the dragons, despite their size and power, were few and untrained in coordinated battle. He had to think faster than Valen. He had to use the dragon's instincts and his own knowledge of the mountains to outsmart them. By afternoon the hunters moved closer. They checked every clearing, calling out for signs of dragons. Aaron watched as Gorath, Lysara, and Tharn hid among the rocks and shadows, nearly invisible. Oriath remained close to him, her eyes sharp and alert. He whispered instructions to the dragons in soft tones, telling them where to hide, when to move, and how to use their wings and strength to create illusions. They listened, their bodies tense, ready for action. As the hunters reached the narrow canyon, Aaron set his plan in motion. He rolled stones down a slope, creating loud crashes that echoed like thunder. Lysara leapt between trees, rustling branches to suggest movement, while Tharn's shadow passed across a distant rock, making it look like a massive dragon was there. The hunters shouted, confused and afraid. Aaron could hear Commander Valen ordering them to move forward, but the forest and mountains seemed alive with dragons that were not really there. Oriath flapped her wings suddenly, sending a gust of wind strong enough to knock small trees over. The hunters scrambled, nets tangling, equipment falling. Gorith unleashed a deep roar, distant but booming, making the humans think there were more dragons hidden nearby. The boy stayed low, signaling each move with small gestures and calls. The dragons followed perfectly, using fear and cunning instead of direct attack. It was a battle of minds, not strength. The hunters grew frantic. Valen's voice rang out, commanding them to regroup, but the forest betrayed them at every step. Rocks fell without explanation, shadows moved in impossible ways, and distant roars echoed through the mountains. Aaron realized that humans had underestimated the dragon's intelligence. They were not mindless beasts. They could see, hear, and act as one when guided by a human who understood them. By evening, the hunters were exhausted and demoralized. They had seen shadows, heard roars, and felt the presence of creatures too clever to capture. Valen's face grew red with anger, but he could not find a single dragon. Aaron led the creatures further into the mountains, where the valleys became narrow and the paths too difficult for humans to follow. The dragons moved with agility, their bodies blending with rocks and shadows. Aaron could see relief in their eyes. They had survived this encounter, but he knew it would not be the last. As night fell, Aaron and the dragons rested in a hidden cave high above the valley. He looked at each of them, Oriath, Gorith, Lysara, and Tharn, and felt a deep pride. The dragons had not only survived the human search but had learned to trust him and follow his guidance. The bond they shared was growing stronger every day, and he knew that together, they could face the challenges ahead. Aaron thought about the other dragons that might still be alive in hidden valleys and mountains. His heart raced with hope. If he could find them and teach them to move wisely, they could survive, even in a world where humans were not always kind. He realized that dragons had been gone from the world for too long, but with courage, trust, and cleverness they could return. The night was quiet, but Aaron's mind was alert. He made a plan for the coming days: explore the surrounding mountains, find more dragons, and teach them to trust humans who would protect them. He knew Commander Valen would not give up easily. Hunters and guilds would come again, but the dragons had learned something humans could never anticipate: they had allies who understood them. Aaron smiled quietly, feeling a sense of determination. He was not just a boy anymore. He was a protector, a guide, and a voice for the dragons. As the stars shone above and the wind whispered through the mountains, Aaron watched the dragons resting around him. Oriath curled her tail gently around a rock, Gorith's golden scales glowed faintly in the moonlight, Lysara's eyes shone bright and alert, and Tharn blended into the shadows, always cautious but calm. Together they had faced humans and survived. The enemy had been revealed and they had outsmarted it. But the real test was only beginning. Aaron whispered to the dragons, "We are not alone. Others are out there. We will find them and we will protect them." The dragons responded with soft rumbles, acknowledging his words. The valley was still, but deep in the mountains life stirred. A new era for dragons was beginning, and a human boy had sparked it. The gathering storm had passed for now, but its shadow lingered. Aaron knew they would need courage, wisdom, and unity to face what was coming. He closed his eyes, listening to the echoes of the forest and the quiet breathing of dragons. For the first time he felt a sense of purpose greater than himself. Dragons had returned and the world was not ready for them. But with trust, cunning, and care they could survive. And Aaron would be there, guiding them every step of the way. The morning sun broke over the mountains, painting the valley with gold and pink light. Aaron woke to see the dragons already moving, stretching their wings and testing the wind. Oriath flapped slowly, feeling the air currents, while Gorith walked along a ridge, muscles tense and ready. Lysara darted between rocks and trees, sharp and alert, and Tharn emerged from the shadows, watching quietly. The four dragons had grown stronger in the past days, and Aaron felt a sense of pride. They had survived, they had learned, and they had trusted him. Aaron knew the humans might return, but he also knew something had changed. The dragons were not just creatures to be feared or hunted anymore. They were clever, united, and guided by someone who truly cared for them. Today he planned to show the villagers that dragons could be respected, not destroyed. He hoped that the bond between humans and dragons could begin to heal. He led the dragons to a high plateau where the sunlight hit the rocks just right, giving a safe place to gather. The dragons circled above, their wings casting long shadows across the valley. Aaron stood in the center, calling softly. To the villagers watching from a distance, it must have seemed like a miracle. One dragon, silver and glowing, lowered its head and let out a gentle rumble. Another, golden and scarred, roared softly but not in anger. The small blue dragon twirled in the air, and the black dragon watched carefully, almost like a guardian. Aaron took a deep breath. He stepped forward, showing the villagers he meant no harm. "Look at them," he said. "They are alive, but they are not here to fight. They are here to live. They can be our friends if we respect them." Some villagers shook their heads, afraid and unsure. Others whispered, remembering the stories their parents had told them. But Aaron's courage gave them hope. Slowly the dragons came closer. Oriath landed gracefully, folding her massive wings behind her. Gorith followed, golden scales gleaming in the sun. Lysara perched on a nearby rock, curious and bright-eyed. Tharn remained a little distance away, cautious but calm. The villagers gasped at the sight of these magnificent creatures, realizing for the first time that dragons were not monsters. They were intelligent, powerful, and capable of trust. Aaron stepped forward again, holding out his hand. "They can trust us if we trust them," he said softly. Oriath lowered her head slightly, letting the boy touch her nose. Gorith nudged Aaron gently, a sign of acknowledgement. The villagers watched in awe. Fear began to fade, replaced by wonder. Slowly, one brave villager approached, holding out a small basket of food. The dragons sniffed, then accepted it carefully. Another villager followed, and soon, others came forward, offering small gifts and showing respect. By midday, the valley was alive with cautious celebration. Aaron and the dragons had shown that coexistence was possible. The hunters who had once sought to capture them now stood silently, realizing that strength alone was not enough to control these creatures. They had underestimated the dragons and the human who had earned their trust. Commander Valen himself arrived at the edge of the plateau, his face unreadable. He watched as the dragons moved freely, following Aaron's guidance without fear or violence. Aaron spoke to Valen quietly. "They are not our enemies," he said. "They can teach us, protect us, and live with us if we respect them. We don't need to hunt them." Valen studied the dragons, their powerful forms and intelligent eyes. For the first time he seemed unsure. Slowly he nodded, understanding that this battle was not won by force, but by trust, courage, and care. The dragons returned to the mountains that afternoon, soaring high above the forests and rivers. Aaron followed, watching them glide through the sunlight, wings wide and strong. They circled over the village, a display not of fear but of protection. Villagers waved from below, no longer afraid, realizing that dragons could be allies, not enemies. Aaron felt a warmth in his chest. He had done more than find dragons. He had begun a new era, one where humans and dragons could share the skies. Over the next weeks, Aaron led the dragons to hidden valleys and caves where they could rest safely. He returned to the village only to share stories, teach respect, and warn of dangers. Other dragons, hearing his call and sensing the safety, began to appear in distant mountains. Slowly the numbers grew. Aaron trained the dragons to move carefully, hide when humans approached, and signal each other when danger was near. The bond between them strengthened, not through fear or power, but through trust and understanding. One evening, as the sun set in brilliant colors, Aaron stood on the cliffs where he had first called to the dragons. Oriath landed beside him, her silver scales glowing in the last light. Gorith, Lysara, and Tharn followed, forming a circle around the boy. Aaron reached out to touch Oriath's nose, feeling the warmth and strength of her body. The dragons rumbled softly, a sound that spoke of friendship, respect, and loyalty. Aaron realized that the world had changed forever. Dragons had returned, not as legends but as living, intelligent creatures. They would no longer vanish in silence. Humanity had been reminded that courage and kindness could awaken even the oldest, strongest beings. A single human boy had sparked a new dawn. As night fell, the dragons lifted into the sky, circling above the mountains, their wings casting shadows in the moonlight. Aaron watched them disappear into the stars, knowing they were free, strong, and safe. And he knew that one day humans and dragons would share the skies again, not as hunters and prey but as allies, friends, and guardians of the world. Aaron smiled, a calm sense of purpose filling him. He had awakened hope, healed fear, and begun a new chapter for dragons and humans alike. The valley was quiet, the stars shining above, and the mountains whispered promises of adventures yet to come. Dragons had returned and with them the world felt alive once more.